Reuben.
Hey, what's up, Tania?
How are you? Great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course.
We are thrilled to have you. And just a reminder to everyone, we have introduced Founder Fridays live series to uplift the founders, ventures that make up the Camelback fam at Camelback Ventures. I'd like to introduce, first off, myself. I'm filling in for Lex Lindsay. My name is Tanya Dahl. I'm the Senior Marketing and Communications Director at Camelback, and I'm joined today, very excited, stoked. Reuben, you are doing incredible things. 2022 Camelback Fellow Reuben Ogbonna, and most importantly, co-founder and executive director of the Marcy Lab School based in Brooklyn, New York. Reuben, you want to introduce yourself? Let us know what your venture does. We'd love to.
Awesome. And Tanya, nice to meet you. I'm Reuben Ogbonna. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Marcy Lab School. We're located here in Brooklyn, New York, and we're on a mission to make college optional. It was a motive founded in 2019, and it was based on my experience as an educator. I moved to New York maybe 7 years ago, and since I've been here, I've been in the sector of education reform that is obsessed with the idea of college for all as the best pathway to economic mobility for low-income communities and communities of color. And as a leader and as a teacher in those types of schools, I've kind of seen how the sausage gets made. I've seen what happens when you're able to go into a school community and inspire students and families to work hard through K through 12 and find their way into college. I also have seen what it looks like when you get into the college of your dreams and you can't afford it. And you're faced with this really, really tough challenge, either taking out more student loan debt that any young person should be legally able to take out, or attending a lower cost school that oftentimes doesn't have the resources to support you. So I know what it looks like when really smart, hardworking, promising students go off to college and then come back without their degrees or come back underemployed. And we think it should be that way. We think that there are some really clear solutions out there to get smart young people into careers that allow them to build wealth for themselves and their communities and set them up to be entrepreneurs. And so that's what we're doing here at the Marcy Lab School.
So, I've done some Googling and research about what y'all are doing. You say that y'all are redefining higher education. I think y'all are disrupting higher ed.
Thank you.
And I know we sent you some prompt questions, but I wanted to actually pivot to a LinkedIn post that you shared a couple days ago, highlighting one of the young men who've gone through your school. Incredible story. Could you spend 2 minutes just talking about this young person and how doors were shut? People said no.
Yeah.
You all stepped up, and this young person is thriving.
Yeah, 100%. This is Shamar Gordon, just an incredible young man. He's a fall 2021 graduate of the Marcy Lab School. So he's been out in the field working as a software engineer for maybe 6 months now. But we met Shamar when he was a college student. He was a college student at City College here in New York. And as an immigrant, he came here in his early teenage years. From Jamaica, and it was always his dream to become an engineer. He got into City College, a New York kid's dream, and was studying mechanical engineering, but just really struggling. I think that was the first time where he really came into contact with the inequity in the public education system here in this country. He was in classes with students who attended better high schools than him, and so they had access to better math classes and smaller classrooms, and super hardworking, incredibly motivated, but he was starting from behind. And his professors, maybe not necessarily empathetic to that story, simply said, you just don't have it. Like, this isn't a major for you. Perhaps you can consider changing your major. And that was a really hard moment for him, because this was his American dream, to come here, study engineering, and get a really stable job that allowed him to take care of his family. When he was faced with that decision as to whether or not he would just change majors and continue on with college, even though he would be studying something he wasn't interested in, he found his way to the Marcy Lab School because one of his best friends was a graduate of our previous class. And Shamar brought with him all of his curiosity, his passion, his discipline, his hard work, and did an incredible job over the course of his 1 year studying at the Marcy Lab School. And I remember when he came, we asked all of our students, like, what's your goal? What are you looking for out of this? And he just said, I wanted to take care of my family. Like, I want to make a lot of money. And that was something that he was unapologetic about, and we're unapologetic about it too. Like, we believe that our students deserve to make a lot of money. And we said, if that's your goal, we're going to help you get there. And he was tenacious in his studies. He was an incredible peer. He made incredible friends. And he was selfless. He helped each other. He was one of our student TAs and helped his fellow classmates get to where he was. He ended up getting an internship at Squarespace. He was one of their first interns that didn't come from the college system. And what was incredible about that, as you can imagine, getting an internship at Squarespace, you're working beside folks who went to colleges like, Cornell and Yale and Dartmouth and UVA, et cetera. At the end of the summer, he was rated as one of the top performing interns in that class. They asked him to come back as a full-time software engineer immediately after his internship. And he signed an offer letter for $130,000 salary. He got a $50,000 cash signing bonus, and then he got over $50,000 in Squarespace stock. And he wasn't the only one.
There. So this is why you do what you do, Reuben. This is why you founded Marcy Lab. That's your why, correct?
100%. And there was another one of his classmates from Marcy that was in that class and got that same job offer too. And because of them, they came back and said, we want to partner with you again this year, and we want to triple the size of the incoming engineers coming from Marcy Lab School. And when I think about like what that means for a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old to sign a job offer for over $200,000 in average in total compensation, it's like yes, like you go from like economic vulnerability to economic independence like instantly. Like Shamar and Devontae, his friend, they moved out and got an apartment together, and it's like super cool, and they have a lot of fun, and they ride electric bikes and build computers because that's what they like to do. And it's like, you deserve that, like you deserve that joy in the ability to live life on your terms. But that's like the first order effect. But what's second is like, one of the things that like the critics may say about the Marcy Lab School is like, yeah, okay, maybe we will admit that college sucks in terms of teaching useful stuff, but at least you get a network. It's like, okay, well, Shamar now has a network. Like those people that he worked beside, like typically in order to have a network of peers from Ivy League computer science, programs, you have to pay $50,000 a year times 4. And Shamar is getting paid that, and now he walks into that network. And then lastly, let's say Shamar wants to start a company one day, which I believe he will. And let's say he wants to go off in search of that dream when he's 26 or 27. That means he would have had 6 or 7 years of getting paid well over 6 figures. He has a network of folks that he can go reach out to become his co-founders, the people who invest in his business. And if he needs to take a risk, he has like the economic like safety net to do so, which is a thing that like most folks from our community never get the opportunity to do. And so it's like, I'm just convinced that like if we're talking about real economic mobility, really putting folks in a position to change their lives and impact their communities, it has to start early, and we got to be thinking radically about these things.
And that is part of your mission, to narrow the wealth gap, which is huge. And your testimonials, the young people coming through your school, you're doing, like I said at the beginning, you are disrupting. There's also a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Around. So for folks that don't know, how long have you been around, and what has been some of the biggest challenges for you, Reuben, as a co-founder and entrepreneur, really?
Yeah. We've been around since, our first school year started September of 2019. We probably spent a year kind of preparing for that. So let's call it late 2018, the idea kind of launched. And it is, it's really challenging to carve out a new space. There are a lot of things that are challenging about running a business, whether it's raising money, building teams, hiring, developing your staff. The thing that we're teaching is really, really hard. So like supporting our students through a really, really challenging curriculum and wrapping them around with all the love and support to navigate like life as a 21-year-old, all that stuff is hard. But when I think about the systems change, like the impact that we want to make, Tanya, like we want, because of the efforts of the Marcy Lab School, when my daughter, who's turning 1 tomorrow, when she turns 18, like I want to live in a world where if she graduates from high school, she knows that she has a ton of options, college being just one of them. And there are a number of schools that are just like the Marcy Lab School that give her the opportunity to pursue her dreams without incurring a mountain of debt, and allowing her to do it on her own terms. But in order to do that, we have to fight against a centuries old narrative about the importance of college. Like the data has long since refuted this idea that college is like the best and most sure pathway to economic mobility and success. Like the data shows that like the majority of Black and Brown students who go off to college in this country don't graduate. It shows that the majority of Black folks who take out student loans in this country will default. Majority, that's what the data says. The data says that generally college kind of sucks, but like the narrative is really, really strong. It's like college is one of our longest standing institutions. It's like I'm sitting here in New York, and like before Columbia, it was King's College, and that existed here before the Declaration of Independence was signed. Like we believe something about like the value of a college degree in this country because of like its long history. And we're going into high schools, Tanya, and saying maybe we should reconsider that. And that's hard, especially because we're going after students who otherwise would have been the first in their families to graduate from college. So, you know, it's a long uphill battle. But we believe that if we could just center our students and our families and the stories that come from the Marcy Lab School and allow them to tell their story, that's how we can really create that change. We can change that narrative.
Yeah, that's exactly. You just took the words right out of my mouth. I was saying you are changing that collegiate narrative, and it sounds like you have partners on board who there's a need, you're filling this need. How have you been able to cultivate those partnerships with folks?
Yeah, we have three kind of buckets of partners that like all have to come together to make this work. On one side are our funding partners, folks like Camelback. We wouldn't be here without the Camelback Ventures Fellowship, and the other institutional funders who've come on and really believe in what we're building, folks like J.P. Morgan and the Pinkerton Foundation and Charles Hayden and so many others. On the other side, we think about our partners that touch the students and families that we want to serve. There are a number of high schools and community organizations in the city of New York that are also thinking differently about like what it takes to be successful in post-secondary and beyond. The Urban Assemblies of the world, Comp Sci High, City Polytechnic High School, Code Nation. All of these folks are the people that are helping us tell our story in the community. And all we ask is that like they position a young person to be willing to listen to what we have to say about, you know, possibilities for their future. But then like the partners that we've really had to be creative, innovative, and like really persistent about are our employer partners. This all hinges on this idea that like folks say, well, you need a college degree to get a good job. It's like, well, let me talk to the people who are giving out the good jobs and get them to change their mind. And my favorite employer partner, and one of my favorite employer partner stories is Weight Watchers here in New York City. You wouldn't think of Weight Watchers when you think of like the software engineering school and $200,000 in New York City, but there's a reason. I remember Betsy, now a friend, reached out when we first started the Marcy Lab School, maybe a couple months in, and she's like, "Hey, I'm a talent acquisition manager at Weight Watchers. I want you to come in, and I want to hear about what you're doing." And when we started the Marcy Lab School, it was, the Googles and the Amazons of the world that were putting out the press releases saying that we're gonna, overlook the college degree requirement and open doors for folks who come from non-traditional backgrounds. So I was waiting for them to reach out to us, and they never did, and they still haven't. But it was companies like Weight Watchers that did. And Betsy was like, well, just come in for a visit. And so I came in, and I see, there's some folks playing ping pong in the corner. There's like cold brew and kombucha on tap. There's a snack bin, and we're walking around. I'm like, Betsy, let me tell you something. This looks like a tech company. And she says, well, yes, Reuben, because it is a tech company. And when I think about Weight Watchers, I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm thinking about, the brick and mortar locations, like the kind of like it's a fitness center, strip malls in the suburbs. But she's like, no, we're a completely new company. We changed our name. We've rebranded. We're Wellness. We're reimagined now. And you're in our New York headquarters, 400 people, half of which are software engineers. And so she walks me by the engineering pod, and she's like, what do you see? I'm like, well, I see a bunch of engineers, a bunch of largely white and Asian males who are building a product that majority of their users are women. So Betsy's like, not only is this a problem ethically, but this is a problem like strategically. The folks who are building this product like don't reflect the people who are using it. And Weight Watchers, unlike a Google or Amazon or Microsoft, they can't just post up on Carnegie Mellon's campus or Harvard's campus and hand out, $200,000 salaries all day and get people to convert on name recognition alone. They have to be a bit more creative. And so for Betsy, partnering with the Marcy Lab School was never something that she thought to do out of the goodness of her heart. And of course, like she, believes in the value of diversity, but this is a business imperative for her. So they ended up hiring three folks from our first class to join their internship class, which is typically their main pipeline to full-time employment as a junior engineer. Three out of 40 of their interns were Marcy Lab School graduates. COVID hit, and so they reached out to all the interns and said, hey, under normal circumstances, we would hire basically all of you all. But because of, economic conditions, we won't be able to extend as many offers. We're going to honor your internship. We want to be upfront about this. And so, we were bracing ourselves for the worst. But at the end of the summer, out of those 40, only 8 folks were asked to come back full time. And of those 8, 3 of them were our 3 Marcy Lab School grads.
Reuben, that is incredible. They're happy, thriving?
Thriving. And, all still there, up for promotion. And, what's even more important than that, Tanya, as we talk about legacy and the theme of like Camelback's Black History Month, yes. Like those 3 folks have opened.
Like segueing between all the all the time. You're on top of it. Yes. Next in line, Camelback. We just celebrated this week our 1-year anniversary of our Generational Inheritance Initiative. So, question to all the founders that we're interviewing: what is the legacy that you want to leave behind for the next in line? I know you touched on it a little bit about with your daughter, sharing what you want to leave behind for her. But overall, what would you like to do?
Yeah, I want to touch on legacy as it relates to the legacy that our fellows are leaving behind. Those 3 started in 2020. And since then, we have become Weight Watchers' largest source of engineering talent writ large. If you go to LinkedIn, their Weight Watchers LinkedIn page and search software engineer under people, you will see that we're number 1, tied with NYU for number 2. And I think about like what that means, for like all those families that are now like benefiting from, 6-figure salaries, the savings and the property that's going to be bought, the businesses that are going to come out of that. Then I also think about like what it means for engineering teams. Like there are folks who are now coming to Weight Watchers from other places. Are like, like I have a manager that is, a first-generation immigrant who is young like me, who, understands like the life experiences that like, this other manager might not necessarily be able to relate to. It's like we get to change the face of that company slowly into a way that makes it better. It makes our world better, and that's a really beautiful way to leave an impact.
Representation, 100%. For Marcy Lab, so we've talked about all the amazing things you've done at this point. Looking ahead to 2022 and beyond, what is in store? What should we be looking out for? What else will you all be doing?
Yeah, we want to grow our impact, Tanya. I think one of the things that my incredible co-founder and like the better part of this partnership, we always talk about the need to do something new and tackle new challenges each year, but being limited by this belief that we will only grow as fast as we feel confident that we can continue to serve every single student well. So we want to grow, we want to serve more students, we want to be solving new challenges every single day, but we want to make sure that we don't lose the essence of what it is that we set out to create. We just signed a lease on a new campus it's going to be the kind of center of our community. It's large enough for us to grow into. It's 17,000 square feet in Industry City. It's really creative, kind of retail and commercial hub in South Brooklyn. And we're really excited to, thank you. We're really excited to fill it. There's so many young people who are inspired by stories like Shamar's or like Laisha's and Devontae's and our many other students. And, we want to create the opportunity for them to benefit from this program as well. And when we think about in the long run, we never set out to build a software engineering school. We set out to build an alternative to college. And so we have this opportunity to create other academic pathways that are built in the mold of our software engineering fellowship. Like the thing we figured out isn't necessarily how to teach code really, really well. I think we do that But I think the thing we really figured out was how to create the conditions for young people to see themselves in a new level of excellence, how to wrap them around with support and set a bar that necessarily that other colleges may not necessarily set for them, how to partner with employers to create custom on-ramps into jobs that they wouldn't have been eligible for before. And if we can do it in a field as like technical and as hard and, often sometimes as elitist as software engineering, then surely we can do it for marketing and business and design.
Reuben, can I ask you a question? When did you pivot your business model? When did you have that aha moment of our original plan, it's not working, this is the need?
Yeah.
Decide we need to do it now.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of the plan from the beginning, Tanya. We knew that we had to start with the field of software engineering for a couple of reasons. One, in New York City, it was the field or the career path that had the greatest track record of folks from non-traditional backgrounds being able to kind of walk in the door. There's this whole for-profit coding boot camp set up here in New York, and so older, wealthier, largely whiter folks who have the $20,000 and can take 3 months off of work have found their way into these software engineering careers through for-profit schools. And it's like, well, what can we learn from that model to build an education program designed for the students that we want to serve? And software engineering was like kind of right down the fairway. But then the second reason why we knew we had to start with software engineering was because the money, like we needed to show people what was possible. Like we had to pick the highest paying, hardest to enter career field and say, if it's possible, use Squarespace. If it's possible for you to hire Shamar and pay him $200,000 a year to do your most mission critical work, then surely you can hire one of our grads and pay them $70,000 a year to do marketing or business development.
How do you convince the Shamars of the world and other young people that once they finish marketing school, there are these opportunities at the end of it? I think it's very hard, right, to uplift young people who are coming from undervalued communities. How do you build that trust for them to move forward through your programs?
Yeah, it starts from day one. What's really interesting about what we do, Tanya, because we decided that we want to work with young adults, because we want this to be an alternative to college. In many ways, like the salary and the job, yes, of course they're looking for that, but it's not the thing that draws them in. It's like if you imagine, Tanya, do you have kids?
Not yet.
Not yet. Perhaps one day. Well,
I have a 15-year-old niece going on
perfect.
5. So
Yeah. So if you think about your niece, it's like what is she gonna be looking for out of her next step when she turns 17 or turns 18? Yeah, it's like of course she's thinking about her job and she's thinking about maybe the car she wants to buy one day or her apartment. But she's thinking about the experience that she wants for herself. She's thinking about something that's like aspirational. She's been watching TV and like for the longest she's had an idea about like what school looks like after she gets to leave the walls of her high school. And like we want our experience to be every bit as aspirational as that thing that they were looking for when they watched, Degrassi or whatever the case was on TV. And so when students come into our building, it's like they're surrounded by like a physical space that like is reflective of how great they can be. It's like, yeah, you deserve that view of the Statue of Liberty from the 11th floor in the water. Like you deserve that. Like you deserve like the same like coffee and stacks and like features that you get out of a tech company because like that's for you. And then like you're surrounded by adults who just believe that like the world is possible for you. One of the things I tell my team, like when we get ready to kick off a new program, a new cohort, because of the world that we live in, oftentimes when a student comes to us, they would have gone through, 12 years of public education. They may have had like some, experience in, public college or community college. Like they can go through an entire, academic career in our city and never necessarily have like the expectation put upon them that they're going to be excellent because of the systemic, like because of the systemic challenges that, our education system suffers from. It's like when they come in, when they come into our building, it's like every single adult who gets paid by the Marcy Lab School believes that you will be a leader, that you will be incredibly successful, that like the world's top companies will want you, that you would have your choice. that you're going to get paid more than 90% of the people in the city. Like that's the belief set. It's like everything that we do, the way that we treat, the way that we talk to our students, the way that we invest in them, like that's the expectation. And then you compare that to like Harvard invocation. Like what's the difference between the students who, start their first year at Harvard versus the students who start their first year at, some of the great public colleges around here as well? There's all smart kids. But like you get to Harvard and the president of the university gets up in front of the stage and says, you will change the world. You will be the president. Like you will change your communities. And everyone else echoes that. And the students start telling each other that. And then that rumor becomes reality. So that's what we're doing here too.
Reuben, you're inspiring. I want to come visit your school.
You should. You should.
You're in New York. You're based in Brooklyn. Do you foresee nationwide?
Yeah.
Sure. In Brooklyn, in New York. What do you see in the long term there?
Yeah. In short, not anytime soon. We still got a lot to figure out here. We got a lot to figure out. I think for most nonprofits of our shape and our size, like the play would be to, maybe get to a couple hundred students here and then figure out what's like the next, campus location we can set up somewhere. And, perhaps that might be in the future. But I think there's some really cool opportunities that come only if we can get to the size of like a small college here. If we're serving a couple thousand students a year. That means we've gotten really, really good at a few different academic tracks. That means we have the scale to really influence like systems change, policy. We can bring employers to the table in a different way at that level of scale. And then it also creates a more dynamic student experience. Like we're really trying to, disrupt college, Tanya, as you said. And I think, we can't rush that. We're in this for the long run. And then the second thing I'll say is that on the other side of our partners, the folks who fund our work, the question that they often ask is, like, how do you scale this? Like, great, you've done well for the students that you've served, but there's hundreds of thousands of students out there that need the Marcy Lab School. How do you get it in their hands? And the answer isn't to like, come up with a business model that allows us to scale to hundreds of thousands of students. The answer is like, there are folks in other communities across the country that have a unique answer to this problem in the same way that we did. And so how can we leverage what we've learned so far and what we will continue to learn to position other people to create the next Marcy Lab schools that's serving a different economic or a different business or a different career track or a different community that we don't necessarily have the expertise or we never will develop. But we have our own learnings and we have our own infrastructure that we're creating. And how can we lend that to other people? Almost like kind of seeding a network or ecosystem as opposed to thinking that we can do it all ourselves.
Reuben, I want to be conscious of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, you just heard from 2020 Camelback Fellow, co-founder, executive director of Marcy Lab School, Reuben Ogbonna. How can people track down information about what you all do? How can they
follow us at Marcy Lab School or go to marcylabschool.org.
Thank you, Reuben. We appreciate you. Black History Month to you and your family and to all who. Thank you.